University is starting back soon, so many of my friends started moving back to town. I am 17 female, live in a house with 5 friends. I wasn't born in the UK but moved here with my parents when I was 17. We come from another European country, so I speak my native language, English, which is far from perfect. I've been learning Spanish and English since I was little, and my Spanish is better than my English. I don't have an obvious accent in English, people just assume that I am Canadian. We had a small party on Saturday and one friend brought his new girlfriend, Jess. Jess 20, and she's the reason why I am posting here. Jess made sure to let everyone know that she's a polyglot and speaks multiple languages. I was obviously impressed. I study modern languages, meaning that I'm learning Italian and German on top of Spanish. And obviously I asked what languages she speaks: Spanish, Japanese, Arabic, my native language, German, Korean, and French. I told her how impressed I was and carried on with my evening. I had a short phone call with my mom, whom I obviously speak to in my native tongue, and I went out of the house to talk to her. Jess was out in the garden and heard my conversation, and she corrected me on my pronunciation. I told her that she was in the wrong and she insisted that she knows better. I didn't fancy getting into any arguments, so I ignored her and went back inside saying whatever. Later, I bumped my head and swore loudly in Spanish. I tend to code switch a lot when drunk, and she corrected my pronunciation, which was funny because it was her who was incorrect. I ignored her again. A while later I wanted my friend, who is from Spain, to hand me something, but I forgot how it's called in English. So I said, "Hand me Spanish word, please," knowing my friend would understand. Jess decided to correct me again, using completely incorrect word. My friend and I looked at each other, and me being drunk, I lost any self-control I had. I spoke to Jess in Spanish asking her what the hell she thinks she's doing. And she looked at me telling me that my Spanish was so wrong that she didn't understand a word. It wasn't, but okay. So I told her the same thing in my native tongue, to which she replied with the same thing. I laughed at her and told her it's my native language and she really shouldn't lie about being a polyglot and correcting people when she doesn't actually speak those languages. She was fuming. She tried to grab her boyfriend's hand and leave with him, but he was too drunk to care and just said, "Told you to stop lying." I don't know how she got my number, but she called me this morning screaming what an asshole I am to humiliate her like that, and if she knew I spoke the language, she wouldn't have corrected me. I do feel bad now. I realize how humiliating this must have been for her, but on the other hand, she shouldn't have been lying. My wife, Irene, is very fit. She likes working out and has a proper exercise regime, etc. She believes that if she feels good, she looks good, and she feels good working out, so who am I to stop her? My brother, Will, spent the latter half of last year going through a messy divorce and now needs a place to stay. Though my brother and I aren't very close, I figured he would only stay with us for a couple weeks until he got back on his feet. Will is a typical gym rat. He's always on a very strict diet, always working out and bragging about his gains. I've worked out with him a few times and he's a little obnoxious. He's always mad at you if you don't work at his pace and is always trying to correct your form. He's a pretty fit and muscular guy, but I don't like to exercise with him. Will has been pushing Irene to work out with him because, according to him, she won't be able to keep up with him. Irene mostly just shrugs him off with a laugh and tells him she would love to work out with him. Irene works out in the mornings, 3 times a week, and then does a run in the evening. But she's been busy this past week and hasn't been able to stick to her usual schedule. Will thinks that she's making excuses because she doesn't want to be embarrassed by him. Again, Irene just laughs him off. About 2 days ago, Irene and Will went on an early morning run. I didn't go with them, but the first thing I heard when Will entered the house was, "The only reason I couldn't keep up with you, Irene, is because you were sweating too much." I found this extremely comical, and kinda just laughed him off. Irene rolled her eyes and went to take a shower, so I thought that the conversation would die. However, Will just kept bringing up my wife's sweat. My wife went to work and he told her to make sure she doesn't sweat through her clothes, or when she called me in the middle of day, he yelled, "Tell the sweaty." I said hi. Of course, the comment aggravated me and I told him to knock it off and stop acting like a child. I thought that was the end of it, but he just kept going. By the end of the day, I was tired of his comments, but Irene seemed rather unfazed by them. When she served him food, he made a comment about her sweating into the food. At this point, I was at my wit's end and I told him to stop acting like a sore, slow, referring to his running pace, loser, and eat his food. Will, of course, got angry and said the only reason he was going slower than usual was because he was distracted by my wife's unhygienic sweat. Irene looked a bit offended by this, and I told Will that I would kick him out if he made another comment like that. He's been super pissed ever since. I jokingly told this story to a mutual friend and they agreed with Will. Maybe I shouldn't be so harsh. I didn't expect this amount of responses. I've decided to kick him out. He will be staying at a nearby hotel now. I've been out of the closet since I was 17, in 2007. When I came out, people in my family said some pretty hurtful things, which I totally expected. Being from a Southern Baptist family God, it hurts to admit this, but my older brother at the time seemed very receptive, surprisingly. He told me that if my dad ever gave me any trouble, to call him and he'd talk to him. That was really the last time we talked about it. Flash forward 13 years, I'm 30, and I'm getting married to my fiancé Scott next year in April. If COVID so graciously allows. I started putting a package together of fun things from my brother and I's childhood, all with the intention of asking him to be my best man. However, he called me 2 weeks ago, claiming he's wanted to talk to me about this for a long time. He went into the long tangent about how being gay is wrong and isn't what God wants. He said he thinks Scott is a nice guy and he loves me, but he doesn't think it's right that we're getting married. It was quite a shock as Scott and I have stayed with him multiple times when we visit my hometown. To top it off, and what hurts perhaps the most, he said my 3-year-old niece, whom we adore, won't be coming to the wedding because he didn't want to have to explain to her what was going on here. Notice he only said that she wasn't coming to the wedding. I think he fully expected to still be invited after this. His wife, whom he started dating when I was 12, feels the same apparently. My whole dad's side of the family feels the same way they do, but I've already written them off mostly in my mind. My mother is beyond pissed and upset at them. I think what upsets me the most is a sense of betrayal. They were my safe spot in the family. I felt like because they're close to my age and younger and went to college, they would understand and it wouldn't be a big deal to them. I almost feel a bit embarrassed because Scott comes from a wonderful Italian Catholic family and they've never been anything less than loving and supportive. I told them that, on what is supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. If they or anyone else is sitting in the audience and in the back of their mind thinking that what we're doing is wrong or not right, they should just stay home. I know my brother and family love me, but it feels up to a point, conditional, and limited. I told them that they learned being gay is wrong, they weren't born not liking gay people. So they can unlearn it, if they were willing. But I don't think that's going to happen. My boyfriend Steve and I have been dating for over 1.5 years. I met him in one of my upper-level classes 2 years ago. At the time he was finishing up his degree, before moving on and working on his master's. Since we started talking, seeing each other, and dating casually, I really loved our entire relationship. Steve and I had a lot of similar interests, which included traveling. We did a small trip to South America a couple months ago for a few weeks, Peru and Chile. We had an amazing time. It was once we got back from our trip that I saw our relationship in a whole different way. We traveled well together, and bonded in a new way. I knew I was in a great relationship. I thought we had a great relationship, until I got some news a few days ago. 3 days ago, I went over to drop a MacBook charger over at my best friend's house, Chenille. Chenille and I have been best friends since we were in high school from the age of 16 years old. I have always considered her to be my number one, and closest person in my life. I have noticed that the past 6 months we haven't hung out in the same capacity that we usually have. Both of us have been busy with our lives, school, work, relationships, etc. But I kinda got the feeling after this past year of university around April that she was starting to move away. She had a bad with her ex that lasted under a year. He cheated on her with a coworker, and the rest is history. They broke officially around the end of January. As I went over to drop off her extra charger that she borrowed, I talked with her mom for a bit. Chanel ended up getting called in to pick up an extra serving shift at the restaurant she has worked at during her degree. Her mom wanted to talk to me about a few things. I was puzzled. Chanel's mom was always really outgoing and funny. We had known each other for over 8 years at least. But she wanted to have a serious talk. Chanel's mom, Karen, went on to tell me that she saw Steve and Chanel sneak around the back of the house about a month or so ago. Karen went on to explain that she noticed this happening 2 other times. At first, she thought we were all hanging out. But Karen told me that she got a weird gut feeling on this situation. She told me that I should talk to Steve and Chanel ASAP. Steve and I were supposed to go out for dinner last night. He picked me up, and off we went. I felt really bad and humiliated the entire time we were out. We ate dinner, had a couple drinks, but we didn't talk much. Steve kept asking me all night what was the matter. I told him nothing. Finally, when we got back to my place, we sat in my room and I asked him and told him what Chanel's mom, Karen, is told me. He didn't answer. In fact, he went pale white. That gave me the answer I needed. I broke down and Steve tried to comfort me. I didn't want him touching me. I didn't even want to hear it. I told him to leave, but I basically had to force him to leave. I tried calling Chanel and texted her that I needed to talk to her. I got no response. Not one. Basically, 2 of the closest people I have had in my life betrayed me. This is so terrible and I feel so bad. I have like no one right now.